towards the door?
What's that?
The click towards
Yeah,
the
it should
door?
go through the door. Yeah, I'm sorry, I switched clickers on y'all because I lost something. Is it gonna click?
I think it's the other way,
I think it's toward the window.
towards the window.
Towards the window, yeah.
Try that.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, sorry.
It's okay. Alright, so how easy is it to go through a door, use a bathroom stall, or go into a dressing room to try on a pair of pants? Pretty easy, right? These simple everyday tasks take no thought at all. Unless you are in a wheelchair, like myself, these things might not be so simple. A wheelchair user might question, can I get through that doorway without pinching my fingers? Can I get in that bathroom stall and get close enough to the toilet to actually use it? Or can I even get in that dressing room to try on these pair of pants? And sometimes the answer is no. There are 56.7 million people in the United States that have a disability. And out of that 56.7 million people, 3.6 million use a wheelchair. So if that many people utilize a wheelchair in their everyday life, why isn't the world more accessible to them? According to the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, all buildings built prior to 1992 don't have to be made handicap accessible unless they're going under a major renovation, which that sounds like a problem to me. Now, I can understand how some of you are, if some of you are thinking, this doesn't apply to me, and I get it. If you're not using a wheelchair in your everyday life, this subject might feel irrelevant. But just because it's not affecting you in your personal life, doesn't mean it's not affecting someone else's. So, as a society, I think we should care. Now, I could be up here and I could talk about all the ways that the world is inaccessible, but I know I would be up here for way longer than 7 minutes. So, let's take a closer look at the three I've already mentioned. Doorways. So, the width of a door isn't always the first question for a wheelchair user. First, we have to get to the door, and sometimes that can be a challenge. Now, I've seen my fair share of questionable ramps, but again, buildings built before 1992 don't have to be handicap accessible, so a lot of older buildings make their entrances, ramps, and doorways just so we can get by. Now, just because a doorway is wide enough doesn't mean that it always works. Sometimes a corner can be too tight, or a door can be too heavy, or those little pushy knobs just don't work. For example, the door to Pennington Hall over here on campus, the door is held together by zip ties, so the push button doesn't work at all. That makes no sense to me. Bathrooms, my favorite inaccessible thing to talk about. Newsflash world, just because you throw up some handicap bars doesn't mean your restroom is fully accessible. Now, I have another example. The bathroom here, or the bathroom on the 3rd floor of Armstrong Hall, is a total nightmare. So getting into it is the first challenge. The door is very, very heavy, and the corner is super tight, so that is basically impossible. But after I get into the restroom, the stall is probably the worst part. The stall is about an inch and a half wider than the standard stalls next to it. So for me to use it, I have to go straight in, lock the door behind me, and then unlock it and go straight out. So for me, in my wheelchair, to make a complete 360 turn, I need 60 inches of open space. And you can see that this restroom stall is clearly lacking that. So for me to comfortably use the restroom, I have to go all the way over to Morris Hall on the 1st floor and use that bathroom, which that's a completely different building. I don't have time for that. Alright, and finally, dressing rooms. If you can get into a dressing room, you're already a step ahead. So, there are two places I like to shop, or two main places I like to shop here in Mankato. Old Navy and Plato's Closet. And when I first went in there and used their dressing rooms, I was like, all right, this place is on top of things, nice wide doorways, big dressing rooms. I was like, this is great. Until I wanted to look at myself in the mirror. And I realized that to look at myself in the mirror, I have to be turned completely sideways. So I can't look at myself straight on because they happen to put a bench right in front of the mirror. Which, again, I understand that these things you don't really think about if you don't have to deal with them. So what I'm asking from you guys is to simply be aware. If you see something that's not accessible or that's not convenient for someone in a chair, just say something. Because I've learned the more you complain, maybe something will get done. Thank you.